is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
No, I think he understands that.
I know not the people on the internet think he doesn't understand it, and those people are
Because he
idiots.
just fell into like a little coach speak thing. It's not that big
Right.
of a deal.
Well, those
but-
people claim to know football, but their nose is too deep in Microsoft Excel. My point being,
Oh my god!
I
When you sit there and you say these things, it's just the self-awareness.
you know exactly who I'm talking
I
about.
know you're talking about, but you're saying it like somebody that is 250
I do not use
pounds that played
Microsoft
football.
Excel. What?
Like you're saying it like you're Dan Campbell. Like you have to realize that
As somebody
like,
who
there's-
doesn't use Microsoft Excel, I think I can talk about not using Microsoft Excel. I think that's perfectly fair.
Keep going.
22.
It's so true. Like you say these things like you had like a 10-year NFL career, and we gotta be tough, and we gotta have body.
It's not a
blows, and
toughness thing.
And we gotta play hard-nosed football. Well, you're gonna get your wish. You're
that's
gonna
not
get your
what it
fullback.
is.
You're gonna get your downhill run scheme. We're gonna be coming off the ball. We're gonna be hitting people again on both sides of the ball, really, because both these guys are into that sort of thing.
But you know
so
what?
You're gonna
This,
get
this
it.
game
You're
has
gonna
been
get it.
played at a high level and coached at a high level for a number of years without having to rely on all these spreadsheets and formulas and things like
Okay.
that. And that's just my point, is
Yeah.
that you don't need that to be successful. I texted you this yesterday. You never responded. Did you see they had the Microsoft Excel National Championship
Yeah, I'm not responding
in Las
to
Vegas?
that. I know you're trolling.
I
I'm
would
not
think that
responding.
would be where you want them to go to find coaches.
No, not coaches. Analysts, maybe. In the front office, sure, but not coaches.
That's
no.
that's your football ops department right there. Just
Yeah,
go get the
you're right.
12 people that were in the Excel
100%.
National Championship.
Listen, what I liked so much about Vrabel's answer about all this stuff, and this is not where we wanted to start with all this news, but what I liked so much about his answers to all this stuff is that he's open-minded about the world of analytics.
no, it's
but he's not
good, but-
He's not married to it, and he's not totally against either, right? He understands that it's applicable and that it has a place. But
it has a place,
it
but
has a
it's not. It
place.
shouldn't be the driving force, which I'm all for.
Yeah,
I've
me too.
always said I'm okay with that.
I've always said that, but it's as well. Like I think I come across as somebody that wants to be married to the numbers and only wants to draft based off the spreadsheet. That's not my thing. That's not what I'm saying. All I am saying is like in any walk of life, like more information is good. Like it's blows my mind when people don't want to close their mind off to being more informed. Like if you were a hedge fund manager on Wall Street, would you not want to make sure that you're, completely informed about an investment, right? Like you wouldn't go into an investment at that level with just like 50% of the information. You would go in with 100%. And that's all I'm asking out of the Patriots.
Sure,
That's
but
it.
I think when you're talking about sports specifically, there's a human element. There maybe isn't in investing, and I think the numbers try to wash that out. And I think it's very important not to forget and to even embrace the human element of it.
I agree. I don't want people to get that twisted. I do agree with you
All right.
to an extent.
I think next year, we usually watch Super Bowl together.
Yeah.
I think next year we should watch the Microsoft Excel National Championship together.
Funny.
No, we should. We might
Okay.
have a good time.
No, we won't.
Well, dude, everybody always wants
you'll
us-
be insufferable the whole time.
People, no, because these are actual pros at it,
You'll
using it
be
for what it's for.
You'll-
Maybe I'll learn
uh,
something.
Nerd.
Maybe I'll learn something.
Maybe you will.
I'm fine with them because they're doing what they do. They're not trying to run a football team. I think the guy who won it was like a financial analyst. So
Well, speaking of running a football team, the Patriots have coordinators. We are
They do.
starting to form a coaching staff here in the building, and I do believe that announcement is coming shortly, formally announcing Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, Terrell Williams as the defensive coordinator, and the return of Jeremy Springer. And now we're also starting to hear some rumblings and reports out there, nothing confirmed, but reports of potential staffers below those guys.
positional coaches.
Yeah, thank you. Positional coaches. So we're going to open the show with all of that, of course. And before we do, hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places and easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. Yes.
Toyota? Now you're adding that's not even close. Where did
Toyota.
the tie come from? I know, but you said Toyota.
I say it how I say it. I'm not going to
Now you're
apologize
inventing
anymore.
letters.
I'm not going to apologize anymore.
Toyota.
Unless Toyota, the great people
Yeah.
at Toyota, come and say, hey, Evan needs to say this correctly.
I do think they want you
then-
to say it correctly.
Then I will change my mind. But until then, I am going to
I've
say
never
it the way
heard
I say it.
Toyota. I've never heard
Well,
that.
that's how I say it, I guess.
All
I
right.
don't know.
No,
Whatever
I've
comes
never
off
heard
the
you
tongue.
say that. That's not how you say it. I think you're two in your head about it.
You're right. I totally am. All right. Let's get down to business, though. Enough joking around, enough banter off the top of the show. So Josh McDaniels back as the Patriots offensive coordinator. I do want to start there. There's a couple different layers to this. The biggest one, though, to me, and really across the entire staff, with Terrell Williams as well, who's first-time play caller, but has been coaching NFL football for like 25 years.
Very experienced.
Yeah, very experienced. This tends to happen with coaching changes that you flip-flop, right? You go from a demanding, hard-nosed, authoritarian coach to a player's coach. And then when that doesn't work, you go back to the authoritarian. And, when you go with an inexperienced staff last year with a bunch of first-time guys doing first-time things, now this year you're going with Mike Vrabel on his second stint as a head coach, Josh McDaniels on his third stint as the Patriots offensive coordinator. It is completely and totally polar opposite approaches from what they did last year. We are no longer going to be worried about this guy's never had this title before. That guy's never called plays before.
The term growing pains will be used a lot less frequently.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. Now, that doesn't mean that it always works, right? Like these flip-flops don't always work. But I do think it's a good thing. And the biggest thing with McDaniels in particular is that this is a truly, a truly sharp, experienced, veteran, savvy coordinator. You can say what you want about him as a head coach, but there's not going to
hire him to be a head coach.
There's not going to be any questions about his ability to run a quarterback, his ability to run, and I don't mean physically run, I mean like coach a quarterback.
Yeah.
Install a system, run an offense, cater the offense, game plan, play call in game. There's not going to be any unknowns. We know exactly what the Patriots are getting themselves into. And for Drake May, that stability and that experience, I think, is going to be really big at both head coach and offensive coordinator for a young quarterback. So I'm excited about that. I want to get into the scheme stuff and what I think will happen here moving forward with Josh McDaniels. But what is just your big picture thought on McDaniels coming back?
Yeah, I think it's a good hire. There was definitely the draw, and I had talked about it when we did that show a couple weeks ago about like trying to find their own Ben Johnson, and that came with risk and reward. But if you just want somebody who can get in and get this thing going as quick as possible, that's Josh McDaniels, and it's not even close. And is he perfect? No. The play sequencing sometimes gets under your skin, the screen stuff, but for everything he brings from an experience standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from his experience with quarterbacks, his ability to be flexible, his ability to be multiple. We talked about this last week, Evan, when people say, I don't like Josh McDaniels' offense. Well, what is Josh McDaniels' offense? Because everything's at his disposal.
Yeah.
There really isn't anything that he doesn't do. There's certainly things he's done more than others, but we've seen him do a very good job tailoring his offense to his quarterback. We haven't seen it a lot, but when we've seen it, we've talked about how that Cam Newton offense with Demir Byrd and Ryan Izzo and a washed Cam Newton was still probably better than it should have been. Took, rookie Mac Jones, had the 6th highest ranked offense in the league. I would say he tailored that to Mac Jones, arguably almost to a fault, because that year I think is kind of why when the stuff about the screens really became, why are there so many screens? And then you saw what happened the next year when they had Mac Jones trying to throw down the field more. So, and that to me is the big thing. Like, how is he going to tailor it around Drake May? There's probably a couple different directions he can go. We've talked about some of the bigger points, right? The quarterback runs, the RPO game. I'll be really interested to see. And generally, he's done a good job of, okay, this is what my quarterback can do. This is what I'm going to ask him to do. I don't think he's going to try to cram Drake May into the Tom Brady system or anything like that. The one spot where I wonder if there's maybe a sticking point or where he goes more towards what he wants to do. We know Josh McDaniels likes to operate under center, so he can run some of that play action stuff. We know Drake May is a shotgun quarterback. What's the distribution like there? Do we finally get to see that pistol stuff that we didn't see last year that we wanted to see? That's my big question, but I mean, that's more operational than just like, is this going to succeed or not? I'm more curious what it's going to look like. Will they be the number one offense in the league? Probably not, and some of that is just on talent. A lot of that is just on talent, but I would expect to see a much more versatile offense, a much more consistent offense than we saw last year.
Yeah, so just to start from a schematic standpoint, it's almost like, let's use the Cheesecake Factory, because they got that big.
I do love the Cheesecake
They got
Factory.
that big menu. You know what I mean? Like there's like 100
Yeah.
things on that menu. So Josh McDaniels has always gone to the Cheesecake Factory, and he's always ordered something similar because of the types of quarterbacks he's had. Tom Brady, Mac Jones, Derek Carr. These are all stationary pocket passers. Although he's always ordered the cheeseburger, that doesn't mean that there isn't a pasta dish on the menu. He just hasn't necessarily ordered the pasta dish as much. I have seen Josh McDaniels enough flex that he has different dishes on the menu. It's just when you're a play caller, you call the plays based off of what your personnel does well. You call the plays based off the defense. So you just might not necessarily order that stuff off the menu. With Drake May, everything is on the menu. He is one of those quarterbacks that it's great to have the greatest quarterback of all time. No one's like saying that it was bad for McDaniels to have Tom Brady. That would be silly. But Tom Brady was not running quarterback runs. He was not moving the pocket. You were not bootlegging with Tom Brady. You were not running RPO and zone read and all that kind of stuff with Tom Brady. Now all of those things are available to a play caller like Josh McDaniels, who has the birth of the playbook to be able to do those things and has shown that in pockets that he can do those things. And I'm really interested from that standpoint how his offense now evolves, because he is one of those guys that I think is really, really smart, and he's going to be excited, I would think, to be able to finally almost combine elements of like the Cam Newton offense with his traditional drop back passing game to get to an offense that melds really the 20 and 21 offenses together. I think that's a good starting point. I'm not saying that Mac Jones, obviously Drake May has much more arm talent and physical ability than Mac Jones. So hopefully quickly they evolve past just the Mac Jones 2021 offense. But as a starting basic install type of point, you have the run game with Cam Newton, which was 8th in the league in DVOA. They were 3rd in the league in rushing yards per game that season in 2020. And the pass game of a Mac Jones offense, you meld those things together when we get here April, May, June, and you're really doing basic install type stuff. My guess is that is where McDaniels will start. And some of those things that we can get into in terms of the specifics, but really at his core, the tenets of his offense, he is going to run a gap run scheme. He's going to run downhill. You're going to get the fullback back, I would assume. You're going to be running.
Well, he told you that.
Yeah, you're going to be.
You broke that story.
Maybe. You're going to be running lead. You're going to be running power. You're going to be running counter. You're going to be running wham. You're going to be running crack toss. Like this is going to be. We're coming at you. We're coming at you downhill. And one of the things that I really love about the McDaniels offense is that he understands who he's putting in binds and who he's putting in conflict with those run actions. So he knows that when he leads that fullback through the hole, that the linebacker has to come down, right? He has to come down and press the fullback. So what's he going to do with play action? He's going to lead that fullback through the hole. He's going to run a cross or a seam right by the linebacker, and the ball's going to go right by his ear, and you're going to be off and running. It's different from the Shanahan-McVay style where you're really trying to get matchups down the field. You're trying to get those single high safeties, get the one-on-ones on the outside, and bombs away down the field. This is a second-level intermediate passing game. I do believe, though, that that's going to fit Drake May because Drake May, unlike Mac Jones, has the ability to drive the ball through those windows, right, in the middle of the field.
You saw him do it last year.
So now the deep middle is back. The seams are back. Like, these are things that I think they had trouble accessing because of Mac Jones's arm talent that they didn't necessarily have in his rookie season. Now they have that back on the playbook or back on the menu, just to continue with that analogy. So I'm excited about that. You mentioned the Cam offense. There's obvious differences athletically between Drake May and Cam Newton. Cam Newton was 6'5", 250 pounds. He was a battering ram.
Yeah.
You're not going to run Mac Jones 137 times.
Drake May.
Yeah, you're not going to run Drake May 137 times like you did with Cam Newton in 2020. You're going to get him killed. You're just not going to do that.
Right.
But there's ways to tweak it. Cam was running inside. He was running in between the tackles. The back was usually the guy. They inverted their RPOs. So the quarterback was going inside. The back was going off the tackle. Now, if you flip that, where all Drake May is doing is kind of holding that unblocked defender to open up numbers to the run inside. And every once in a while, when that end crashes, he can just keep it out the backside and just be in space. And now he's not in crowds. He's not going to get his bell rung, hopefully, as much and get hit as often as he would if he was running downhill at the line of scrimmage like Cam was. So there's ways to kind of tweak those things. But when you go back and watch that 2020 offense, like I hear a lot about Josh McDaniels' offense, it's outdated. Like he doesn't know how to do those sort of things. It's all there in 2020.
Yeah.
All the RPO, all the zone read, all the quarterback design run on the goal line, like all that stuff is all there.
The roster just wasn't good. Like he didn't have the talent to execute it at a high level. I'll say this too: if you want to do some of that stuff, especially the goal line stuff, that full house package they ran with Cam Newton, right? Joe Milton.
Okay.
Joe Milton's a tank.
Let's just
No,
let's
why not? Don't let's just
let's not get to Joe Milton 17 minutes into the show. Like
why not? Like
because that's not the point. Like the point is to get this offense to a point where you don't have to do gimmicky stuff.
No,
like
but
Joe
Josh
Milton.
McDaniels does gimmicky stuff. Look at Ben Johnson with the trick plays. Josh McDaniels, that's in his bag too. And whether it's, all right, we're going to go full house on the goal line with Joe Milton because he is a tank and he can put his shoulder down and run through a defender on the goal line. Whether it's getting creative with a guy like Pop Douglas, who is going to fascinate me in this offense. I've always said the one real issue I've had with Josh McDaniels, he's never really been able to figure out scheme touch guys, N'Keal Harry, Jonnu Smith, except for Cordero Patterson was the one guy I figured out. There happens to be a very Cordero Patterson-like player in this draft and Savion Williams.
Oh, my goodness.
Is that somebody you start talking about? Let's not rule out the gimmicky stuff because McDaniels is good with the gimmicky stuff.
I'm not ruling out the gimmicky stuff. I
want to see Marcus Jones throw a touchdown pass to Joe Milton.
No, but they need to have some base offense.
I know they do.
Ben Johnson, I think, gets misunderstood a little bit because people make a big deal out of the trick plays that the Lions have ran over the last couple years. That's not what makes Ben Johnson great. What makes Ben Johnson
what
great
I was told
is
made him
offense.
great for the last 3 weeks.
By casuals. What made Ben Johnson great was what is his system. Right. And I think that's the difference between a guy like McDaniels and some of these other guys that they floated. And look, I am right there with everybody on the tight pants guys. Like I love those types of guys. But the issue with hiring like the Udiniski, the kid from Minnesota, is 28 years old. The issue with that is obviously inexperience, but it's, to unpack that, he's never run a quarterback before. He's never coached a quarterback before. He's never developed a young quarterback before. He's never called plays in an NFL game. Like those types of guys with a second-year quarterback and an offense that really has a long way to go was a bit of a concern. That's why I came on to the show last week and said I'd hire McDaniels. Yeah. Because this is just where you're at right now. It's a lot like Vrabel. Like where you're at right now is you need stability. You need experience. And from that, until we get into the trick plays and the Joe Milton package and all that stuff, you need to install a base offense and a system that is sound and that works and that can be successful and then you can start adding all of this other stuff.
But I liked them to get to the point where they're adding some of that stuff this season. Right? You don't need to wait 2 to 3 years to do that. You get the base offense.
I would just much rather see Drake May scoring touchdowns.
I know, obviously, but McDaniels is good with that stuff. McDaniels is good with, because it's a core Belichick philosophy. Do we have players that are good at specific things and we can take advantage of those specific skills? If you're down on the goal line and you have a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback who's mobile, McDaniels is the kind of guy that, and it's not going to be every play.
Yeah.
But McDaniels is the kind of guy that's going to find a way to take advantage of that. You have a guy in Pop Douglas who's incredibly good in small spaces. He's quick. He's impossible to tackle in a phone booth. Like, McDaniels can take advantage of a guy like some of these guys that maybe the big thing with Pop Douglas, right? And I don't mean to compare Pop Douglas to Joe Milton. It's a little different. But when it comes to Pop Douglas, the question has been, yes, he's great with the ball in his hands. He has this great skill set, but can he be a volume guy?
Right.
I think McDaniels is the kind of coach from his experience that will have ways to make Pop Douglas an impact player without him necessarily having to be a volume guy. And I think that's part of the perk with Josh McDaniels is as you build this roster up, and eventually you want to get to the point where there's all these elite players all over the field, right? But he generally, the Mac Jones year, the Cam Newton year, he generally gets more out of the talent he has disposable for him. His offenses generally punch above their weight. And part of the way he does that, a big part of the way he does that, is he finds players with specialized skills and he maximizes those skills. It may be in spurts, but he does it. So as you talk about installing the base offense, that's obviously the big picture here. But let's not lose track of the fact that he is going to do part of the draw is he's going to do some other things that are creative that maybe they weren't doing the last few years that is going to allow this offense, hopefully, right? How did they get to be the sixth scoring offense in the league under Mac Jones? It wasn't by putting it all on Mac Jones' shoulders. It was some of the other stuff they were doing, right? Same with the Cam Newton year. So whether it is a package with Joe Milton, whether it is getting creative with Pop Douglas, maybe it's doing something with the running backs. And I have a running backs take on Josh McDaniels too I want to get to. I'm excited to see that side of it as well.
Okay. I'm not. But
of course not.
I understand where you're coming from. The other thing I just wanted to mention with McDaniels, I really don't think he gets enough credit for how good of a run game schemer he is. So his last 3 full seasons as an offensive play caller, not the 23 season, taking that one out because he only coached the Raiders for half the year, but they were 8th, 9th, and 5th in DVOA running the ball. In 2022, for all its faults in Vegas, he had the rushing king in the NFL in Josh Jacobs. The number 1 leading rusher in the league was Josh Jacobs that season with Josh McDaniels. So when you talk about taking things off Drake May's plate, making it easier for Drake May, what we're really talking about is, can you be balanced, right? Can you have a run and a pass game that are successful? And then can you hit the easy buttons in the passing game, which is play action, RPO, moving pockets? Like, those types of things are what make it easier for a quarterback so that he's not just drop back passing, progression read, get the ball out in 2.5 seconds all the time. He's not trying to be Tom Brady, where he's just efficiently picking apart a defense all the time. The easy button is becoming extremely popular. It's why Ben Johnson just got a head coaching job. It's why Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell are the darlings of the NFL right now on the offensive side of the ball, because those guys are able to do that more times than not. With McDaniels, I think he has that element of his game to him. I think he's great at scheming together the run game and the play action passing game. We've talked about this in the past, couple years, Patricia, Alex Van Pelt. A lot of the time, like, they would run plays that didn't make sense with the play action pass, right? Like, they were running like a downhill duo, and then they were pairing that with like a bootleg route concept. And you're just like, who's this impacting? Who's in conflict here? Like, where's the space that you're trying to create with this? It just didn't marry together. And I think one of the more refreshing parts about this hire is that they are going to run a system. They are not going to run a collection of plays. Yeah. This is going to be a system that's going to fit together, that's going to make sense. Now, after all the gushing and all the praise that I just heaped on Josh McDaniels, I do have concerns about
I'll just, on the run game real quick, the other thing I'm excited about is I would think we're going to get back to the early down passing down back. And the last couple of years, it's just been by drive or by stamina or whatever, right? All right, Ramondre, you're in for these 5 plays. Antonio Gibson, you're up next. And it's not situational. There's benefits to that. There's certainly benefits to that. But I think one of the downsides is by the end of the year, the last 3 years, Ramondre was just, it was too much. Right? They put too much on his plate. I would hope now we go back to that early down passing down dynamic, which the downside is it's a little more predictable. But it allows you to specialize players, and guys are doing what they're best at more often than not. So Stevenson's a well-rounded back. We'll see. Is he the early down guy? Is he the passing down guy? I would think he'll be the early down guy. And then it's, can they go find? We get back to this conversation now of, the next James White, Shane Vereen, Danny Woodhead,
Right.
Kevin Falk, finding that kind of guy. And maybe that's Antonio Gibson. Maybe he's just a spellback for Stevenson in the early role, and there's another passing down back, something like that. But I am looking forward to them going back to that dynamic, that philosophy, splitting the running backs on offense.
Well, from that standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, our job just got a whole lot easier because we
Yes.
know the types of players that he's going to be looking for. We know the types of all the way down the line, offensive linemen. They're going to be a power run team again. You can bet your bottom dollar that the outside zone stuff is out, right? Like, that's not coming back. It'll be just like I said about the Cheesecake Factory. It'll be on the menu,
Right.
but that's not going to be a featured part. They're not going to major in outside zone. They're not going to be big on that. They're going to get back to running the ball downhill. They're going to get back to get, guards, Mike Onwenu, Shaq Mason, like bigger guards, full backs. Like, I think Ramondre Stevenson benefits a lot from this. I think this was where he was at his best, was in this type of offense. All this outside zone experimenting, I don't think it ever really fit him.
Yeah.
I think this will fit Ramondre. I think this will
Yep.
get him back to where he needs to be as well. The last thing in terms of the drop back pass game on the positive side, then I do want to talk about some of the small C concerns. I don't have any like big major concerns, but I do have some small C concerns. One of the other pet peeves that I had about the Van Pelt offense, and we discussed this ad nauseum during the season, was how little scheme-related conflict there was in their passing game to beat man-to-man coverage. Like, it was a lot of isolation routes. Like, we're going to sprace the field. We're going to be stagnant. We're going to be isolation routes. And it just, you beat the guy across from you. With McDaniels, you're going to see stacks back in. We're going to see pick plays back in. Like, he's going to find ways to get guys off the line of scrimmage and have them have advantageous ways to attack leverage and attack man coverage. How many times would you see Julian Edelman like in that short motion, and then they get him into that 2 receiver stack and then just snap the ball right away and have the defense on its heels? Like, those types of little intricacies to their drop back passing game that will be back in with McDaniels are intriguing. Because it just makes it easier on receivers to get open, right? You're not just asking a Kayshon Boutte to go one-on-one on the outside and win 5-6 times a game, which we know is probably not going to happen. So you hope that the receivers are better, and that lends itself in itself. But at the same time, I think that McDaniels is really, really good at those sort of things. As far as the small C concerns go, I think the main one, for me at least, is how much information are we putting on Drake May? Like, how much stress are we going to put on Drake May at the line of scrimmage, making the calls, making the line calls, making the checks, like all those types of things? Or are they going to go with a more watered down quarterback friendly version of the offense that we know? And some of the things that you've heard about McDaniels during this year off, that he's gone around to some college programs, Ohio State, USC, a couple other places to make, I think Albert Breer said it was, more user-friendly, try to make the offense more user-friendly. I'm intrigued by that, and I hope that that's real. Like, I hope that that's actually where they're going to go, because it's a lot to put on a second-year quarterback. And not that Drake May isn't smart, but I don't necessarily know if that's what you're really trying to flex with Drake May, is the mental muscle. Like, you're trying to flex the playmaking muscle, not necessarily winning above the, between the ears, because that's what he has to do.
Do you think there's any chance that McDaniels is willing to get flexible and maybe borrow from Van Pelt, that David Andrews is more involved in the pre-snap stuff?
Yes, I think anything's possible. I think anything's on the table. My guess is that he will be in Drake May's ear until they shut off that headset 15 seconds before the snap. And that's what he did with Mac Jones his rookie season. And so I think that he will hold Drake May's hand in that respect more than we're going to put this on the center. Okay. So we'll see how that works out. Other coaches have done that. Sean McVay famously did it with Jared Goff early on in Jared Goff's career. So I think it's possible. And as we build here, the hope is that he can put more and more on Drake May's plate mentally. But it's a lot. You already as a quarterback have a ton of things to worry about when you get to the line of scrimmage, and now to add on top of that, what's the front, where's the blitz threats coming from, how are we sliding protections, how are we setting mic points, like all that kind of stuff. It's cumbersome. Like there's a lot to think about from the quarterback perspective. I would rather not go down that road again, but we'll see how Josh McDaniels does that. The other thing that is just a small C concern for me is that notoriously he's not allergic to motion, but he's not a big proponent of motion. They've been middle of the pack. His offense is, the last 3 or 4 years that he's run an offense have been middle of the pack in terms of motion rate and all that kind of stuff. And if they're going to be gun, and we talk about this a lot, if they're going to be a more gun-centric team than what he's run in the past, window dressing is key. Like you have to have motion. You have to have elements like that in your offense to bait the defense out of passing lanes and to manipulate defense and things like that, because you're not going to get the under center, turn your back to the defense, hard play action fake. So you have to have orbits where the motion goes behind the quarterback, jets where the motion goes in front, other different things like that to add elements and options for the quarterback to then confuse defenses. So he's spent some time, like I said, going around to college programs, Chip Kelly, Lincoln Riley, like those types of guys. They all major in motion. Every college team does basically at the D1 level, at the high level schools. So where does he go with that? How does he make this gun offense more, I hate to use the word modern, more
careful there.
Just
how does he involve more motion?
How does he evolve? How does he evolve offensively in those respects, I think is important because his last two offenses, the Raiders and the Patriots, were both top 3 in under center rate, right?
Yeah.
You're under center almost 50% of the time in Vegas in 22 and 43% of the time with the Patriots in 21. I just can't imagine that Drake May is going to be super comfortable with that. So if you're going to be a gun team, how do you now build the McDaniels staples into a gun offense?
Right.
That's a big one. But I don't necessarily think it's impossible. It's just where do they go from there? Do you have anything else on McDaniels?
No.
All right, let's go over the defensive side with Terrell Williams, who I think is an interesting hire. A lot of really, really high praise for him as a defensive line coach. Now, he's never called a defense before, so that's a big unknown. The only guy right now that they have that doesn't have all the experience necessary at the job that he's being hired to do.
Yeah.
So he's never called plays before, but when you listen to former players, current players on the Lions talk about him as a defensive line coach, it's nothing but heavy praise.
Jeffrey Simmons too was raving about him on Twitter.
Yeah, so he's really good with that. He's really good with the front. How do they now go out and get somebody that maybe knows the secondary and the back end a little bit better? Is that Mike Pellegrino?
I would love it if that's Mike Pellegrino.
Is he like get elevated to like a pass game coordinator / secondary coach
That'd
or
be
something
great.
like that? Possibly. I'm just speculating.
Brian
but
Belichick too.
Yeah, that's possible. But with Terrell Williams, what are your thoughts on him coming aboard? And I will put this other caveat in there. It's Vrabel's defense. I don't have a ton of fear that the defense is going to be in bad hands with the head coach.
And that's my big takeaway. Like, this is somebody who worked with Mike Vrabel for a long time. Vrabel clearly trusts. He made him an assistant head coach his last year in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be Vrabel's defense, which I've said all along, that's what I want it to be, then it's just about getting somebody who is familiar with Vrabel, how he wants things done, how he wants to operate all of that, and it certainly seems like they got their guy in Williams. So
yeah,
I'm with you. Not a ton of big picture thoughts because I maybe he calls the defense, maybe Vrabel calls it, but I think it all runs through Mike Vrabel. It's going to be his defense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a little bit of the film study that I've done on their 23 defense, and I think it's a good thing with Vrabel, but he's so malleable to the personnel that I don't know how much of that was just this is the horses that they had, and so they shifted because of that, and that's not necessarily what he is going to major in here. But they did a lot more 4-down stuff. They're a lot more even front, 4-down defensive linemen, a lot more aggressive up the field, penetrating type fronts. They overload a side. They go wide 9 with the A gaps open on passing downs to run those games and let the 3 techniques penetrate. They did a lot more of that kind of stuff than the Patriots do, and they played a lot more zone behind it as well. Now, the Patriots, I don't think are going to do that in terms of zone. But I do think that there's a chance that we could see more of a 4-down attacking front with Terrell Williams and with Mike Vrabel than what we've seen in the past. And I for one, love it. Now,
it fits with personnel.
They have to find the linebacker play, right? Like that's the biggest thing. Is that with that type of system, with guys getting up the field, with the coverage space that you want to be able to cover as well, like you don't necessarily want the Juwan Bentley types, right? You want the Matt Milanos of the world. You want those athletic linebackers, the Fred Warners, if you're going to run that kind of system. So they would have to maybe identify some linebackers that could do that sort of thing. Zach Bond, hello, free agency. But at the same time, I've been clamoring for them to be more aggressive and there's a place for it. There's a time and place for everything in football, but the two gapping, build a wall, gap integrity in the pass rush, don't run past the quarterback. It all has a time and place. But at other times you need to be able to pressure the quarterback.
And what you're describing, that's going to maximize guys like Christian Barmore, Keon White.
Yep.
If they draft Abdul Carter, would be a great fit in what you just described. So I think they'll be flexible as well, but definitely energizing the front. That actually reminded me, if you want to go back, we can do this or not. It's up to you. I did like a winners and losers of the McDaniels hire for players.
We can do it.
Or do you want to? I don't want to blow the whole show up.
Nope.
I just thought of it because we kind of did that on defense. Kind of ups and downs. I'm putting you on the spot with ups and downs. How about that?
Okay. This is off-season ups and downs.
I had four winners, 4 losers.
Okay.
For the McDaniels hire.
All right.
Winner Ramondre Stevenson.
Agreed.
We already kind of talked about that. I think he's going to be put in a better position. Kendrick Bourne.
If he's here. Yeah, agreed.
He was on a 1,000-yard pace before he got COVID. Now, that was 3 years ago and an ACL tear ago. I get that.
Yep.
But he was excited yesterday on social media. I get why.
Yeah.
Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
Another guy that had a
Both
career
systems are good with tight ends, but
yeah.
Hunter Henry.
City So. I'll explain the City So in a second. That more relates to my losers.
Okay.
So here, or not losers, but like here's who's going to struggle more. Here's who this is not good news for.
Yeah.
Jalen Polk.
Okay. I'm not so sure about that one.
We'll call Jalen Polk Javon Baker 1.
Javon Baker I can understand because of the mental side of it in this offense, but doesn't Jalen Polk have a little Jacoby Myers in his game?
Well, that's what we thought last year, and look what happened. So I just, like, if he struggled with the offense last year.
I feel like this system, from a mental standpoint, you mean? I guess I could see that. I just think from a skill set standpoint, and look, Jalen Polk is one of those guys that I need to see it to believe it.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and count on anything from Jalen Polk, no offense to him, until he shows it. But I do think from a skill set standpoint, he reminds me a little bit of Jacoby.
No, he does. But I guess here's my point. Here's why I put him on, like, the guys that might end up on the unfortunate side of this, right?
Yeah.
That's, besides the quarterback, you can argue that's the most crucial role in Josh McDaniels' offense.
Yeah.
When Josh McDaniels, and I'm sure he's already done this, but when Josh McDaniels looks at the film and decides who from last year he's going to keep involved.
Yep.
Is he going to see Jalen Polk and say, okay, slot receiver's set? Or is he going to say, we got to get somebody to fill this role? And I just wonder if McDaniels wants to go to somebody that is more proven and that he maybe feels he can rely on more. So in terms of role being in jeopardy, Jalen Polk.
Fair enough.
And then the other two, and this goes to City So Point, Cole Strange and Layden Robinson. They're going to go back to running downhill. They're going to go back to running gap. We're going to see power, right? You just know McDaniels wants to go get himself a Mike Onwenu at that left guard spot. He wants to go get some 330-pound mauler at left guard. That's not what Cole Strange is. That's not what Layden Robinson is. Maybe Strange sticks at center, and that's why I put City So.
So I think Layden Robinson is that.
He's not that big, though.
I think Layden Robinson is a power guard. Like,
he's a power guard, but McDaniels like
guard.
Big.
I don't think Layden Robinson's that small.
I think he's like 310.
I think Layden Robinson fits that scheme. Cole Strange definitely doesn't. Layden Robinson, I actually feel like fits a gap scheme better than what the outside.
Well, so I think
stuff.
City So does.
Yeah,
too. So that's why I had City So on the positives because and maybe they bring in somebody else entirely, but I think McDaniels he's going to want a Mike Onwenu on the left side.
Yeah, and
I like Cole Strange, certainly not that guy. Maybe Layden Robinson's that guy. Maybe City So's that guy. But.
Yeah, obviously Joe Tooney's just on a Hall of Fame
Joe
track.
Tooney's, that's like saying, just go find your Tom Brady.
No, I'm not saying like that they need to find a Joe Tooney, but I would say that with McDaniels in the past, though, the left side of the line has been geared towards more athletic guys.
That's true.
Nate Solder, Joe Tooney, like those are the two guys that come to mind immediately.
Layden Robinson, 6'3", 311.
So I think he believes a little bit in blindside protection and having a strong left side and pass pro and all those types of things. They were at their best when they had Joe Tooney at left guard, who was a more athletic, nimble former college tackle moving inside to the guard, and Shaq Mason at right guard, right? You guys, you have your bulldozer on the right side next to Marcus Cannon, who was another bulldozer on the right side, and you had Nate Solder and Joe Tooney on the left side, who are your more athletic, move type of guys. So I wouldn't necessarily rule out a more athletic guard. It's just not. It can't be Cole Strange, right? It's got to be somebody that's got a little bit more mass and a little bit more play strength than that. Yeah, but I do think that there's a possibility that they could go after an athletic guard just in a different kind of mold than a Cole Strange. I think those are all true. I think Antonio Gibson fits this system really well too in the passing game. He's in that James White type of role potentially in this offense, and I could see it. I could see that being a nice fit. But in terms of as we spin this forward and personnel, and you talked about Polk and the slot receiver and things like that. I mean, this to me definitely puts slot receiver, or at least Z receiver, at the very, very top of the list of the offseason, where you need to get a guy that can be targeted 125 times. Right. Not Pop Douglas and not a wild card right now like Jalen Polk, but somebody that can truly be a engine to your offense from the slot. And, that to me is, Abuka, Restrepo, like, are those guys now people that we should really be talking about in the draft?
I've seen a lot of people say Chris Godwin in free agency.
Godwin, if he's healthy, I think is a really good.
It's a good if, like it's an important if, but
that's a really good one too. But that slot role is not. It's not a Pop Douglas, like to your point earlier. Yeah. It's not like that occasional explosive. No, it's like this is going to be a 90-catch guy.
Pop Douglas, to me, if we're going to comp from past McDaniels offenses, and again, I think it's going to be different. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something new for Pop Douglas that we maybe haven't seen McDaniels do a lot. Maybe you combined kind of, I almost go to like Brandon Cooks, and can you have him do some Brandon Cooks type stuff, but not that to that level? I look at like Danny Amendola. So you combine some of the Brandon Cook stuff and some of the Danny Amendola stuff, and that's Pop Douglas. But Pop is not a volume guy.
No.
He's never going to be a volume guy. And they need that, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker can go over the middle, get blasted, get Troy back Brown, up, next play, that sort of thing. So we were talking about a guy recently who you comp to Deion Branch. I was like, oh, that's a really good comp.
Oh, Golden from Texas. Yeah.
I think we said in that conversation, if they hire McDaniels, he's a great fit.
Yeah, I had like two comps for him. Deion Branch, for people that don't remember Deion Branch as well, like he reminds me a lot of Jaden Reed in Green Bay, who in Green Bay's offense is sort of a 60% usage guy because they run the ball on early downs and they want to run out a 2 wide receiver and have the receivers block and on the perimeter on outside zone and all that kind of stuff. And this offense, it's always great to have a receiver that can block inside, but it's not necessarily quite as important, I would say, than like the McVay Shanahan offenses because you're not running to the perimeter
and we've
so much.
Seen some of these guys get here, and maybe they weren't, like Edelman was a quarterback in college, but we saw him kind of learn and embrace because he knew he needed to do that to get on the field. Embrace that blocking role. It's another thing McDaniels does good as a coach, like kind of instill that. So maybe Matthew Golden gets here, starts blocking his ass off.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I do like Matthew Golden, though. He's smooth. That guy is smooth, explosive, runs well, runs good routes. Reminds me a lot of Deion Branch. Like he's not a power guy. Like he's not gonna like moss people and stuff like that. He's gonna finesse you a lot like Deion did. So
little Lad McConkey in there too.
Little Lad McConkey, yeah. I mean, look, Lad McConkey would be a great fit.
McConkey would be like the ideal fit.
Yeah. So those are the types of guys that we all know that we'll be looking for with McDaniels. On the defense, you have your list. Do you have a defense list too, or was it just
I was only writing this for offense, but if you want to do defense, we can do this off the cuff here.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that come to mind.
I mean, we are talking about Keon White, assuming Barmore's healthy.
Yeah.
Those are two big ones. Those are winners.
Yep. I love the idea of giving Vrabel and Terrell Williams Keon White and just seeing if they can hone that skill set a little bit, refine it a little bit. Two guys that know the defensive line inside and out, that can coach it really, really well. that's what also attracts me so much to drafting Abdul Carter, is because you're going to be giving this ball of clay pass rusher to Mike Vrabel, who's going to get out there with the pad on and is going to be like doing, hand technique stuff and teaching him things and having him watch old film and things like that. Like that's what you want out of a pairing, 4th overall pick, head coach type of thing. I think Keon fits that same bill. He talks a lot about last season how he didn't get the coaching that he wanted. He didn't feel like he was being coached hard enough, corrected, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's going to be an issue with these two guys. So that'll be exciting. I hope that they can get it out of them.
So those guys for ups, downs, you mentioned Bentley,
yeah,
Tavai, kind of that same thing. Like secondary is kind of personnel specific, right?
Yeah.
To me, it's, are they going to have a true free safety, or are they going to keep trying to play Duggar or Peppers back there? Right. If you had a true free safety, this is great for Duggar and Peppers because they can be those kind of more athletic linebackers.
I would assume that Vrabel and Williams, just based off of what they did in Tennessee, they were pretty flexible with their safeties in Tennessee. Like Byard always played up top, but they were pretty flexible with guys, and they seem to know how to use those tweeners, kind of like have that Bill secret sauce of, this is what you're good at, this is what you're not good at. But I do wonder with the safeties, with Duggar, and assuming that Peppers is available to play, do they have to get away from that a little bit because of how similar they are? And I don't know if that necessarily fits. I don't know if it even would have fit 100% if Bill was still here, right? Like, I just don't know if that tandem, as good individually as those players can be when they're when they're playing well and at their peaks, I just don't know if I ever have loved the fit next to each other. So maybe they do go out and sign a Javon Holland or somebody like that and make a splash in free agency on a true free safety that can play up top. I certainly would love Javon Holland, but any sort of combination of that. But I'm interested to see what this defensive line does with Williams. It was a big issue last year. They couldn't stop the run. We all know that. They couldn't rush the passer. They couldn't play in the trenches. And as much as I have concerns, small c again, concerns about him never calling plays before on a defense, he is lauded for his work with the defensive line.
Do you think he's going to call it, or do you think Vrabel's going to call it?
I would assume he's going to call it with Vrabel overseeing it, a lot like Bill used to do, with guys that were a little bit early on in their careers as play callers, Steve early on, Patricia early on, where it was one of those things where it's like, all right, like, what are we thinking here? Like, what are we doing? Big third down, what's your next play call going to be here? And just trying to keep them on their P's and Q's and keeping them ahead of things. That's the biggest thing from a play caller, other than marrying the front and coverage and all that stuff. It's also understanding the situation and like what's coming, right? Like, okay, we're going to have this third down. What are we protecting against? What are their tendencies? All that kind of stuff. I think sometimes, play callers that are young and inexperienced, they're just calling plays to try to do what they want to do. And they're not necessarily thinking about the bigger picture of the opponent's tendency, the game situation. I don't mean to pick on him, but like, setting an all-out blitz at Matthew Stafford for a 70-yard touchdown to Cooper Kupp, right? Yeah. Like, thinking of those types of things, I think, are important for young play callers. Not that he's young, but inexperienced play callers. That is why I'm so excited about McDaniels, because you don't have to worry about any of that stuff on offense. Like, he's been there, done it, So that's exciting from that aspect of it as well. Any losers on defense other than the safeties? I guess
I said Bentley, Tavai.
Yeah, some of those tweener guys I do always worry about. Is every coach going to see that as a useful thing, that you're kind of like this hybrid tweener type of player? I always worry about those guys.
Godshaw, if they're not going to two-gap.
Yeah, Godshaw, if they're going to, they might play some of that, shaded nose, those over fronts and things like that, where the nose is in the A gap and is still really considered not a two gapper necessarily, but he's got to hold the point of attack, right? That's his primary responsibility. But a true nose like Godshaw, I could see that being something that they go away from. I like that though. Like, let's get aggressive. Like, let's get up the field. Let's put some pressure on the quarterback. Let's get in the backfield and make some plays behind the line of scrimmage. Like, I think too much of this defense, even when you stuff the run, it was still like a 2 or 3 yard game. and that's considered a stuff. But
Yeah.
like there was not enough penetration. There was not enough splash plays behind the line of scrimmage from this group for the last couple of years, and that's how you get teams off schedule, and that's how you get them into long third downs where you can rush the passer and you can blitz and you can dial it up and you can create turnovers and flip field position. Like I just feel like that's more of what they need to do defensively. Last thing on this, and then we'll open it up to everybody. Lots of emails, lots of phone calls. I wonder in the draft at the top if there's a couple of guys that I am not necessarily in love with for them that maybe are in play. Mason Graham. I
Mason
think,
Graham's a lot more realistic now.
Yeah, if they're going to run 4 down, if they're going to run, double 3 techniques, things like that, a lot more of that, it becomes a little bit more of a possibility. And even though I don't like it because I need not necessarily like, I wouldn't say that it's a high floor is probably the wrong way to put it, but I want to hit down the fairway. But like some of those Georgia guys, like a Terrell Williams, for example, who is raw, but if you give them to 2 guys that know what they're doing and developing defensive linemen like Vrabel and Terrell Williams, like could they get him to that next step of his development in like a trade down scenario? Obviously, like if you're trading down to the 8 to 12 range and you just want to go with upside and tools and all that kind of stuff and have Terrell Williams coach the guy up, then I think some of those Bulldogs, Williams in particular, is somebody that could be back on their radar. But exciting stuff. We have a coaching staff.
Maybe Luther Burden a little higher on the board too.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, I like Luther Burden. You know that. Yeah, I can see that.
Anything on Springer?
Well, that's your slant.
I think it was good. It was a good special teams unit last year.
Yep.
No need to overcomplicate it. Vrabel's familiar with
Tom Quinn.
Tom Quinn, who's the assistant. I'm glad Springer's back. I also thought he just did a good job last year. We haven't talked about this a lot because it's not like a football thing, but you want kind of the tone of the coaching staff to change, right? Not walking things back in press conferences, passing around blame, things like that. I still go back to the answer that Springer gave that last Friday of the year when he was asked about what it was like getting booed. And he was like, look, it's our job to make, essentially, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
It's our job to make sure they don't boo us. They're paying good money. They're taking their time out to watch us, to follow us. We got to give them something better. I think that's kind of the tone you want this coaching staff to take. So,
okay. Sorry, really quickly, but before we take calls and stuff, I do want to go over some of the assistant coaches and potential hires there. So Tony Dews from the Jets, it sounds like it's being reported that he's going to come over to the Patriots and be their running backs coach. I believe, right? Is that reported that he's going to still coach running backs? He's been a long time running backs coach, so I assume you coach running backs. But the biggest hire now from this point, and I know I'm going to shock everybody when I say this, but it's the truth. The biggest hire now is offensive line coach, right? Like
more than wide receivers coach?
Yeah. Offensive line coach is the biggest hire on the staff other than your coordinators and your head coach for any staff. So a couple names here. Obviously, the guy that I would target, and it gets complicated because he's under contract with the Giants, but I would bring Carm Brasello back in a second. I think he's a really good coach. I think he was great here in 20 and 21 with the Patriots. He was good in Vegas in 22. If they can get Carm Brasello free from the Giants, if he, has a really long-standing relationship with Josh McDaniels, maybe it's kind of like what Vrabel's doing with some of his guys, like, Stretch and Terrell Williams. Maybe Brian Dable, says, okay, fine. Like he goes to Brian Dable and Brasello says, hey, like Josh is my guy. Like, he's back coordinating the offense in New England. I'm going to go with him. I would hope that would be the case. That would be my number one pick. Keith Carter, who's was the Jets offensive line coach last year, was with Vrabel in Tennessee. That's another name to watch. And I would say Cameron Clemens, who's right now is on the 49ers staff as their assistant coach, offensive line coach, was on the Titans staff as well as their assistant offensive line coach for a number of years. So Carmen Brasello is the guy to me if you can get him out of New York.
Yeah.
That's who I would target. But that's a big hire. And second to that, big hire, wide receivers coach. I agree with you. Chad O'Shea is an obvious connection.
Makes a lot of sense.
He's in Cleveland right now.
And he worked with Vrabel last year.
Yeah, worked with Vrabel last year. He's their pass game coordinator and their wide receivers coach, though. So he's got a pretty good title with the Browns. So I don't know how that would work. And I like Wes Welker. I like the idea of bringing Wes Welker back, have him start training up whoever's going to play his position in the slot. In particular, he's played in this offense. He knows it inside and out. Was an all-pro player in this offense. And, he's coached in some other offenses in San Francisco and Miami in that West Coast tree where he could bring some of that flavor maybe potentially to it from a schematic standpoint. So I like O'Shea's kind of the safe option.
Yeah,
I kind of like taking a little bit of a swing on Wes Welker.
I've been big on Welker for a while now. I'll give you one more, and I don't know that he's a connection. I just think he's a hell of a coach, is Sean Jefferson.
Yeah,
and assuming New York rebuilds its staff, which you'd think they will, Sean Jefferson, add him to the list.
Yep. All right. So that was my list in terms of the offensive line coaches and things like that. So let's take some of these phone calls. I know you guys have been waiting. Sean is in Vancouver. What's up, Sean?
Hey, Evan, I want to defend your answer to the question about your favorite running play. I like power. I think it's a good running play, and I think Babel was excited about it, bringing in the fullback. And we need to, win in the trenches. They need to establish a run because your most important point to me is, like, that's going to open up the play action. You got to have defenses thinking that you're going to run the ball. And, Alex, I also agree with you. I know everyone want to talk about it, but with the short yardage jumbo package and having Joe Milton in there and maybe doing a tush push or whatever, but they also need to win some short yardage, especially at the goal line. It would be nice to just be able to run in the ball there when they can, when it's first and goal. And one more thing, last thing, Evan, I like your Toyota reads because they remind me of the comedian, the late great Gary Shandling, when he said, what do they? I just got a new car. What do they call it? Is it called a Porsche or Porsche? I can never get that right. So I'm the proud owner of a new Toyota. So that's it. I'll leave you on that, and you can comment. Thanks.
There you go.
Thanks, John. Look, I'm not anti the Joe Milton package, all right? And I love...
It's just fun, so you don't want to talk about
Josh McDaniels has always been, like you said, flea flickers, double passes.
Yeah.
Like, all the trick plays have always been in Josh McDaniels' in his bag. I'm not anti any of that stuff. I just am more interested in talking about what their base concepts are going to be and how they're actually going to move the ball offensively, not the one time a game that they pull out a gimmick.
Well, if we're talking about, we'll get into that in the spring, but if we're talking about what excites us about Josh McDaniels overall, I think it fits. From the YouTube chat here, so you mentioned Carmen Brasilla for offensive line coach.
Yes.
Cole Popovich.
So, and this is just my read on it. I'm not reporting anything. But it seemed to me that Cole Popovich and that whole 2020 COVID season and all that stuff, he burned a bridge with Bill. I think that's pretty clear. I know, but Josh is an extension.
I mean, you're talking about bringing Welker back.
Yeah, but that's different. Well,
he definitely burned a bridge.
Not like this. I think Cole Popovich, something happened. I don't want to speculate, but something happened with Cole Popovich that clearly, because they had multiple opportunities to reopen that door.
Yeah.
And they didn't. 2022, 2023, they had opportunities to bring him back on the offensive staff, and they had no desire. So maybe Josh, it's a different guy. I totally concede that.
All right.
But that it's a good name. It's a good name. Yeah. Let's continue with the calls because these guys have been waiting, and then we'll get to some of these emails. We're getting tons of emails, which is great. Patty is in Agawam. What's up, Patty? Patty,
what's up?
All right, Patty, you call back. I know you will. All right, Justin is in Virginia. What's up, Justin?
Hey, what's up, fellas? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so let's say, because we always talk about who we want to draft, but we don't talk about the free agency portion of it. I got a hypothetical free agency, then I want to ask who you want to get with the 4th overall pick if this is the free agency. So let's say you fail to get T. Higgins. You get Chris Godwin off of an ACL. You feel like he's 80% there. You get Cam Robinson and Jedrick Wills. You're at the 4th overall pick. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Cam Ward went before you. Who do you want?
All right. So, wait. Let me.
Yeah, hang on. Run that back.
Run the names of free agency.
So you get a tackle in free agency.
It's a little tough when we're just listening.
Yeah.
Okay, so you failed to get T. Higgins. You got Chris Godwin off of an ACL. You feel like he's 80% there.
Okay.
You got Cam Robinson and Jedrick Wills as your tackles. You don't have anybody you feel like is that notable of a name outside of these guys. When it comes to the draft, Abdul Carter, Cam Ward, and Travis Hunter went. Those guys.
Those guys are off the board.
Okay.
Fourth overall pick.
I get it. So basically, you solve tackle, you solve receiver,
ish.
Thanks
for the call,
and
Justin.
Carter and Hunter off. Which, regardless of the free agency stuff, there's a real chance Carter and Hunter are both off the board. I'm not ruling that out. So that is something we'll need to discuss. I'll just say this real quick. I'm good on Jedrick Wills.
He's
heard
had a tough time.
Heard a lot of stuff out of Cleveland about him just having like a compete level issue, and that's
a lot of injuries.
Yeah, not the kind of guy they need. In that scenario, I'm trading down. I'm definitely trading down, and then depending on where I end up, if Tet McMillan's still there, him and Godwin as your X and your Z or your X in your slot, I think there's some potential there.
Yeah.
I still might take a tackle. And maybe play. No, I probably wouldn't, because it's going to be Robinson and maybe take a right tackle. Maybe now a guy like you're not trading down far enough for Emory Jones. So no, I guess not. I take Luther Burden because it's going to be tough to get him and Godwin on the field at the same time. Maybe probably best defensive player available is where I'd go. Whether that's Mason Graham, Michael Williams. Now I might have a conversation about Will Johnson, honestly, if he falls a little bit after a down year.
If you are really confident that you have solved tackle, like you have signed two guys that you really feel are starting caliber players and are going to be seamless, plug and play type of guys in free agency. I don't know how you get there in free agency.
Can you do that? I don't think you can do that. Hey, if you are that confident off of the guys that are available in free agency this year, that's kind of a red flag to me.
Yeah, I think Alaric Jackson's a nice player.
Yeah. Do you think he leaves LA?
No, I don't think anybody wants to leave LA. But I think Alaric Jackson's a nice player. I don't see guys like Ronnie Stanley hitting the open market. Nope. And Cam Robinson, after that playoff game, definitely gives me some pause. 12 quarterback pressures allowed in a playoff game. Not pretty. So I don't know how you solve tackle. But if we just go off the assumption that you solve tackle, and then we're going off just to play out the scenario that Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are also off the board, Tet McMillan does become intriguing. Because
he also had them signing Godwin, too.
Right, and then that's your nice compliment on the outside. It just kind of seems like that would complete your offense. And at that point, you are just looking for that finishing piece.
You know what? So I'll say this. Let's say, hypothetically, you solve tackle.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't know that you can do. But you solved that.
Yeah.
You've gotten Chris Godwin, who's a good wide receiver. So you had a pretty good free agency. As much as I hate not addressing the defense, I'd probably look for a pass rusher. There's also a part of me that thinks, all right, we did a hell of a job in free agency with this roster.
Yeah.
Instead of moving down 6, 7, 8, let's move down to 12.
Yeah.
Get an absolute haul. Let's get a second this year and a future first next year. And then I might take Tyler Warren.
Okay. I could see Tyler Warren being great in this offense.
Tyler Warren and Josh McDaniels. And now I have... you're probably you're picking at 38. You're picking again in the top 50. I'm hammering those early day 2 edge guys, the Jack Sawyers, the Princely, the guy from Ole Miss, whose name I can't remember right now. Yeah. Right, I'm hammering maybe Deion Walker. I'm hammering the defensive front on those day 2 picks. And now I have 2 first-round picks last year and next year. And if pass rusher is still not solved, I'm flying up the board next year and getting a pass rusher.
It's not a bad plan.
Now there's a lot of ifs that you have to do to get there.
Right.
And I don't know that they're all achievable. But if that's what we're doing, I still might take Michael Williams. But a part of me says, let's get that absolute haul for next year and let's have some fun with Tyler Warren.
Yeah. So I like Tyler Warren as a player. I always am cognizant in general of building your offense through a tight end because.
But you've added Chris Godwin.
Yeah, but Chris Godwin, I'm not sure where he's at.
I guess. Tyler
Warren is a phenomenal talent. Don't get me wrong. He's not Brock Bowers, but he's a phenomenal talent. But unless you're really thinking that tight end is Gronk or Travis Kelce.
Well, I was going to say.
Those are the only 2 guys that I can think of in recent I guess you could kind of say Mark Andrews when he was in his prime.
Let's not hype up Mark Andrews right now.
Not great timing, but like
Buffalo legend.
But like a couple years ago, like maybe you could have said Mark Andrews, but that's with Lamar, who is like obviously his own thing.
That's its own. But I'll say this: if there is anybody who has experience building an offense, not just around one tight end, but two tight ends.
Yeah, no,
this is the guy. And you're going to have Hunter Henry. You're probably going to run out of 12 a ton.
Yeah.
You might end up using Tyler Warren kind of as your second slot guy.
Yeah.
And you're going to run out of 12 a ton with Hunter Henry, Tyler Warren, Chris Godwin, and
you're gonna have some big boys out there.
I'll throw Kendrick Bourne in there, I guess, as that next guy.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your offense. You could do
I don't
worse.
hate it. I just feel, again, like this is sort of more of a philosophical thing.
Right.
Like if you don't have like a true Gronk, Kelsey level talent at tight end, like building your passing game around the tight end position can be difficult. And there are examples of it really at the top of the draft, especially, Kyle Pitts. Let's see. Brock Bowers had an awesome rookie year individually. Yeah. Let's see what that offense looks like if he's the engine of the offense. Like, can they build it out around him? I think you still have to have something on the outside. You still have to have, a great quarterback, obviously. And I just worry about that being, okay, he's our number one coverage dictating game plan Tuesday player is our tight end. That tight end better be a dude. Like, that better be a stud tight end.
That's true. I guess, yeah. And again, this is all. There's so many ifs here, right? Carter's not on the board. You've solved these things in free agency,
right? So, like a guy like I said, Ted McMillan, and I know that I've been kind of lukewarm on Ted McMillan, but the main reason why I am lukewarm on McMillan is because he's a finishing piece to me. Like, you can't. The Patriots are not in a position right now to be drafting finishing pieces, or like the cherry on top of their offense. They're not in that spot yet. They need to build up the offensive line. They need to build up the trenches on both sides of the football. They need to get that foundation so that when you drop a Ted McMillan into this offense, now you have Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. You have A.J. Brown in Philadelphia. Like, you're hitting the ground running at that point. This is why, look at the Giants. And I know the Giants have a much worse quarterback situation, but the Giants draft Malik Neighbors. He's awesome. What did it do for him?
Right.
It didn't move the needle. It didn't. He's a great player. It did nothing for them. So until you get to that point where you can start drafting, we talked a lot about the Lions yesterday, and somebody emailed it and said, well, like, why would you stick your nose up to drafting Jahmyr Gibbs? I don't. If you are in the position the Lions were in when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, they already had the offensive line. They already had Penny Sewell. They already had the quarterback. Like, so he was their Sony Michel, but better, right? Like, he was the finishing piece. And that's where I'm at with the wide receiver position early in the draft, because I feel like that, not to like pick on the caller at all, but I feel like that situation was begging us to say Ted McMillan, right? Like, and so that's where I'm at with that. Was there something else you wanted to say?
No, that was it.
All right, Patty's back. I knew he would be. What's up, Patty?
What's up, guys?
Hey,
how we doing?
Doing all right today. I got a couple questions. So the first one is, Alex, if we're able to, if Carter's there and we take him, and we're able to like move up, or if we stay stationary and Ariante Ursari's there, do you consider that being like half-assed in the left tackle position? That's the first question.
No.
Okay. And can both of you kind of sell me on Mason Graham? Because I'm crazy. Maybe it's just me. I think you can get like good interior guys, defensive interior guys in free agency possibly. I don't know what the list looks like this year for interior, but I mean, we need that guy to get after the quarterback. You know what I mean? So like if you guys think he's worth it, if he's there at 4 and the other guys are gone, just try and sell me on him. I'll take that off air, guys.
Thanks, Patty. So the sell for Mason Graham is Jalen Carter, right? Like, if he comes in,
let's not go that nuts.
I'm not saying he's that type of player.
Right.
I'm just saying interior pressure. Jalen Carter. The name that I really think that he reminds me the most is I know I always say the name wrong, but Fiske and with the Rams.
Yeah, Braden Fiske.
Like, just that active, up the field, tenacious playmaker at that spot. And I think Graham's a little bit more well-rounded, which is why Fiske fell to the second round.
Yeah.
Or Fisk or whatever fell to the second round, and Graham's going to go top 10. But the sell is that with him and Christian Barmore, hopefully back at full capacity next year, you are going to push the interior of the pocket consistently. Yeah. That's the sell. Now, I'm kind of with Patty. Like, I don't love the positional value of that. It fails very, very Washington Commanders circle like 2016 to me, where they had all those guys like Deron Payne.
Jonathan Allen's a hell of a player.
No, they're all great players, but where did that get them, right? Like, they drafted, remember that streak they had where they drafted like nothing but interior defensive linemen for like 3 or 4 straight years.
Yeah, all from Alabama.
And they had all these first round picks on their defensive line, and they stunk, right? Like, I just, that would be what I would worry about a little bit. I would much rather get the complementary piece off the edge. We all love Abdul Carter, but even if it ends up being somebody else,
Michael Williams, James Pierce,
I would kind of rather go that route and be more balanced, where you have like 3 points of attack.
Especially if if it's Mason Graham or Michael Carter plus you get an extra top 50 pick because you're probably trading down. Right. I would much rather that. I think Graham's a good player. I just don't know for the spot the Patriots are in right now. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
And I know he's not a 3-down interior player necessarily, but when you're talking about obvious pass, like third down, obvious pass, like can't Keon White kind of do the same thing next to Christian Barmore that Mason Graham's going to do for you in terms of penetrating and lining up over guards and rushing inside? Like, I feel like you already have that third down interior pass rush tandem if you have both those guys healthy and playing well at the same time. So I just that's it with Mason Graham. Good player. Like, he's
great player. Yeah. Great player. My rule of thumb for this draft, and Evan, maybe this is too simplistic, but the Patriots have 3 either blue chip or potentially blue chip players on the roster. That's it. They have 3 guys that are true like playmaker. You're going to count on them down in, down out guys. Drake May, Christian Gonzalez, assuming health, Christian Barmore. Right. You have so many other needs. So many needs. To take a player at one of those 3 positions at the top of the draft when you have all those other needs, to me, is just you're consolidating talent too much. You need to spread the talent around the roster.
Exactly.
Now, if we find out, and obviously don't want this to happen, but if we were to find out that Christian Barmore can't play football anymore because of his medical condition, now, all right, it becomes a much more realistic conversation to me because you don't already have that guy in that spot. But assuming Christian Barmore is coming back, you got to spread the wealth. There's too many other positions that need to be addressed for you to be like, we have 4 elite players, 2 of them are at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Washington Commanders in 2018.
Well, they were just drafting as many Alabama players as they could, and all the best Alabama players happen to be defensive linemen.
That's what it was, though.
That's what it was. But
the roster.
I think what happened was they just were ignoring the positions and looking for the guys that had Alabama next to them.
Oh man,
and they all happened to be linemen because those fronts were unbelievable.
Confidence.
They were confident. Those Alabama
It's
guys.
important to have when you're on the road. With Bridgestone tires on your car, truck, SUV, or minivan, you are riding on tires you can trust. Bridgestone tires are engineered to give you peace of mind so you can focus on enjoying the journey. So whether you're on your morning commute, a cross-country road trip, or a relaxing Sunday drive, Bridgestone tires will be with you wherever life's roads may lead. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey, available now at Sullivan Tire. Are you getting ready for the big game? Wait, we got plans for the big game. We're doing something for that. I guess we can't say the name. We have to call it the big game. Create your own winning watch party with fan favorites from Bob's Discount Furniture. Bob's got everything from reclining sofas with charging ports so your phone never dies when you're checking stats. Those are very handy. I have one, and it's very handy. Bar carts, perfect for celebratory drinks. Stylish servers for all of your halftime snacks, and must-have media centers so you'll never miss a play. So stop in on our visit mybobs.com to score major style points with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. All right, let's get to some of these emails because we have 17 million of them, and we really appreciate it. This is
still getting calls too.
I know. This is from Tyler in Connecticut. He was just wondering if we had any. We all know T. Higgins, all know the big names. Is there any under the radar free agents that we would like to see the Patriots target in free agency? And I have one, and he does list them here. I don't know if he's necessarily under the radar. He's going to be like an all-pro, but I love me some Zach Bond with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think that he's one of those guys. They might tag him in some way, transition, franchise, whatever. But if he hits the open market, I am definitely in on Zach Bond. Athletic, can play on the ball or off the line of scrimmage. Like, he's one of those classic Patriot Mike Vrabel style linebackers that you can just move around the front and do different things with. Can cover really well down the field. So I'm a big Zach Bond guy. I mentioned Alaric Jackson earlier. I think that if you look at this tackles in class and you assume like Ronnie Stanley's not available, I think Alaric Jackson solves a spot at least as a stopgap and not a Chukwuekorfor for stopgap. Like
he's a real
a real NFL offensive tackle. So those would be my two off the top of my head.
So I'll give you a couple. I've said Carlton Davis.
Yep.
Kind of. I don't think they do need a second corner. It's not something they need to address super heavily. It's falling down.
You good? You good?
This thing's falling down. I just want to make sure people can hear me. Carlton Davis. Adding another corner, I think would make a lot of sense. He gives them that size, that physicality they need. I'll give you one on offense. This literally just came to me. I can't believe it took me this long to think of it. We were talking about slot receivers, right? A guy you can trust, trying to get that Jacoby Myers type. When I first saw this guy, when he came in the league in 2020, I was like, that's a Patriots receiver. And we didn't know it was going to happen with Belichick and McDaniels and all that. But I remember seeing him being like, that guy's going to play for the Patriots at some point. And he's finally a free agent this year. And it just so happens he has a good relationship with new head coach.
Oh.
Nick Westbrook-Ikine.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a good player.
He's a very
underrated,
reliable, steady, consistent pass catcher.
Yeah.
He's got the frame. I don't think he was that volume guy in Tennessee. I'd have to look up his stats. I don't know what his high for targets
he played well
is.
against the Patriots last year. Not that that's everything, but he's at number 3. But
he's never had more than 60 targets in a season. But if you were to sign a T. Higgins, draft a DK Metcalf, trade for DK Metcalf, draft Ted McMillan, right? You get that guy at the X.
Yeah.
And now Nick Westbrook-Ikine is your slot Z.
Yep.
I think that's pretty good. And I don't know. Am I wrong, Evan? That I think I could project him towards 100 targets?
He's a solid player.
Yeah.
And will do all those little dirty work things and can run routes and things, but he's maybe a little bit more, detailed than Kendrick Bourne. Like, he's got like Kendrick Bourne has these mental lapses where he forgets the route or runs it at the wrong depth, and he's talked about this openly. So I'm not saying anything about Kendrick Bourne that he hasn't said himself. But Ikine strikes me as a guy that's a little bit more locked in, but his skill set is a little bit redundant or similar to Kendrick Bourne.
He's bigger too, 6'2", 215.
So I just wonder a little bit about that, but I do like him as a player in terms of that sort of tier. And that's sort of what you're looking for in free agency. And, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Commanders today just because of what's going on with Jaden Daniels and that in the run that they're on right now. So much of my takeaway from this Commanders run is that they've done such a great job, Adam Peters did, of just getting the floor of the team to be higher going into the season so that if Jaden Daniels was a stud, which he is, that he could elevate the roster the rest of the way, right, to get them into the NFC Championship game or at least the playoffs. I don't think they ever thought they were going to be in the NFC Championship game. But they, like, Westbrook-Ikine, I think, fits this mold, which is why I segued to it. They signed, like, Bobby Wagner and Wiley at right tackle.
Zach Ertz.
Biotish on the interior offensive line. Zach Ertz.
Frankie Louvu.
Jeremy Chin.
Yeah.
Like, all these guys that aren't household superstar type players, but they're all NFL starters. And that just took the whole level of the roster just went up a notch because they just had this floor that was more stable. It's not all that different than what the Patriots did in 2021, right? Where they kind of spread the money around. They made one splash with Judon, but for the most part, they were just kind of getting solid, capable, reliable, steady veteran presence on the roster. And then you just hope that the draft and the quarterback is what knocks it out of the park. And that's what happened in Washington.
This is what I remember giving this take last year when we were doing the draft and develop stuff. It's like, that's all good in Green Bay when you have a foundation built, but there's no foundation here. And it was like, you don't have to do free agency every year. I get it. The Packers never do free agency, right? Elliott Wolf, that's not his background.
Yeah.
And look, he's not the one calling the shots anymore. But just 1 year. Do free agency 1 year.
Yeah.
Build that floor that you don't have, that you had in Green Bay. That's what I wanted them to do last year, and they never did it. So hopefully they do it this year.
Yeah, and then really where you get your ceiling is in the draft, right?
Right.
So they get Jaden Daniels, which is the obvious one, but they also get Sandra Still. They also get Brandon Coleman at left tackle. They also get Luke McCaffrey, who's been like a nice complementary piece for them. Like you get all Eckler is another one of those veteran guys that they added at running back. Like you get all those guys in the building to make your team better in the short term and have that floor rise to a different level. And then if you draft well and you stack that on top of that roster of veteran guys, now all of a sudden you have a ceiling, right? That's a little bit higher than what you thought. The Patriots are in that exact same position. If they can sign 6, 8, 10 of those types of veteran free agents to increase the floor of the team and then have another really strong draft. Have a strong draft.
2023. I thought you were talking about 23.
But just have a good draft.
Yeah.
And you stack that on top of it. Now we're cooking with gas. Like now you're building something here. And that's my hope for the Patriots in free agency. I'm not saying you can't go out and sign T. Higgins if you want to. Or
you probably can't because he's going back to Cincinnati.
Yeah, or Josh Sweat, who's going to get a top of the market deal.
Josh Sweat makes a lot of sense for them.
I'm not saying you can't do that.
Well, you even said comparing it to 2021. They got chewed on, right? You get that one guy.
Right. The comparison here, just because the head coach is going to be a lot to 2001, where they signed Vrabel, Anthony Pleasant, Roman Pfeiffer. Like they signed
Antoine Smith, I think was that year?
Like 10 of those guys.
Yeah.
Like those types of players. Obviously, the modern comparison is what Washington's doing right now. This is from Phil in North Carolina, who's a big Drake May fan, so I assume that's why he is now a Patriots guy. So I like those types of people. I appreciate it, Phil. He said that he is not a huge fan of the Josh McDaniels hire. I wanted to get some differing thoughts in here. I didn't want it to be all sunshine and rainbows. He's not a fan of Josh McDaniels, and he wants us to list 4 pros about Josh McDaniels without saying that he's not a flight risk for a head coaching job. I can do this easily.
That was the first half hour of the show.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand. Like I didn't even mention that he wasn't a flight risk. I think that he's got a system, which I love.
Yeah. He's
a known quarterback developer, which I like. He's very good at game planning, and he's been in those shoes of in-game play calling, game planning, and I love his run game and play action passing. That's 4. I can keep going.
Let me see if I can do 4 different ones.
Okay.
He has a good track record. It's limited, but in the times he's done it, it's been good.
Yeah.
Of molding what he's calling, what he's designing around the talent, rather than trying to force the talent into what he wants to do. You talk about the quarterback development. He and his system have a good track record of developing offensive linemen, so I'll piggyback on that. I much prefer the situational running back distribution versus just doing it by drive or by stamina. And now we're getting on 8 here. I'm trying to remember what you said.
While you're thinking, there's one other.
The visor's a good look. The visor's a timeless look.
The one other thing that I just want to push back a little bit on, the whole he calls a lot of third down screens. So I looked this up.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting all hot and bothered about 15 plays in 2021. They called it 15 screens on third down in 2021.
So my
15. That's like 2% of the entirety of the plays that they called, right? They called 1,000 offensive plays. I'm not very good at math, but I can tell you that's like 2%, right? 1.5%, whatever. Right? That right there is we're getting all hot and bothered about something that they did 2% of the time.
And I think the reason he did it, again, he does a good job of calling plays relative to the quarterback skill set.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what he felt best about with Mac Jones on 3rd and longs.
I nailed that, right?
Right.
1.5%. Look at that. That was pretty good.
Good for you.
Right.
What would you rather do on 3rd?
Math, right, Marine? I did that. Yeah.
What did you use Excel to figure that out?
It's called a calculator.
All right.
I don't know if you heard of that.
I have.
Yeah.
Trust me, I have
the
used
fact that I had to
calculator.
use a calculator to do that's kind of sad.
I've used a calculator for Saturn.
Yeah.
What would you rather Mac Jones doing on 3rd and long? Would you rather him throwing the ball, deep in cuts, or would you rather screen and try to let James White make a play or whoever make a play?
Yeah.
So
the one concern that Phil also mentions here in this email, and this to me is fair. Like I don't necessarily think that I'm super concerned about it, but it's fair. is just the fact that McDaniels did not have a great relationship with players in Vegas, and that was a big part of why he did not work there, and how that could deter free agents or trade guys they target in trades to want to play in this offense and to want to come here. We also got another email. Devontae Adams went on it's related, so you can make your point. Devontae Adams went on a podcast at some point and didn't say anything like totally scorched earth about McDaniels. But he just mentioned that it's like kind of a dink and dunk offense, right? Like they're kind of an efficient offense. They're trying to take chunks out of the defense instead of go for big plays and chuck it deep. And just that whole thing of McDaniels, his relationship with players, his style of offense, like, is that the most attractive destination now?
Well, I think it depends on the player. Look, and this is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The time in Vegas, like, he's not the head coach here.
Yeah.
And all the players that played for him here loved him. You look at what, Kendrick Bourne last night reacting like that. So to me, where he might make it a tough sell, and this is for any player, any coach, anywhere in the league, guys want to show up, especially when you're talking about those top free agents. Yep. Guys want to show up and they want to have a role.
Yep. If
you're trying to recruit a, slot receiver, Josh McDaniels is going to pull up all this film of Welker and Edelman and all these guys and say, this is what we're going to have you do, and that guy's probably going to be pretty excited. Recruiting a guy like T. Higgins might be tougher. When's the last time Josh McDaniels had a guy like T. Higgins? So maybe Devontae Adams, who, objectively is not a great fit in this offense.
Yeah.
So I don't think, like, the Vegas stuff is going to hurt him so much as what can he show players his offense can do for them, and that obviously comes down to the player.
Yeah, I just don't necessarily think that it's this detriment in terms of the style of the offense, because as long as you have players that fit that style of the offense, we've seen how effective it can be.
Right.
So, in McDaniels' offense, you are not going to get bombs away. Like, you're not going to be a team that's going to throw a bunch of deep passes. You're not going to get a lot of your plays, your explosives are going to come a lot because you're hitting a 15-yard catch and run receiver down the field and he's getting to 20 plus because after the catch. Those are the types of plays that you're going to see a lot more from McDaniels than a downfield aerial passing attack. But if you have players that can catch and run, then what difference does it make, right? And I think that a guy like Kendrick Bourne thrived in this system because he is good with the ball in his hands and he is good after the catch. So as long as you build it, and this is, something that I didn't think that the last regime did a really great job of identifying, this is the type of offense that we want to run. This is the style that we want to play. What are the players that fit that style of offense?
Right.
And I don't think that they did a great job of that in the draft. I thought that, drafting Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson were heavy, bigger power guys, heavier guys at tackle, especially with Caden Wallace, that some people projected to move inside a guard someday. Like, that doesn't fit an outside zone scheme, right? Like that's not an outside zone tackle.
No.
Jalen Polk, a guy that is, more of a possession slot Z type of receiver, when we know that they want it to be, 12 personnel, heavy personnel with vertical shots off of play action and things like that. So how did that fit? That's what you got to get back to. That's what the good teams do. They identify what they want to run. They identify the type of team they want to be schematically, and they get player fits and archetypes for that scheme.
The old Belichickism. It's not about collecting talent. It's about building a team.
Yeah, so they got to get back to that. This email is very simple subject line from L from Wisconsin. Evan is wrong. I am wrong about putting the protections on Drake May. And L said that this will allow the offensive line and the quarterback to be on the same page. And so that the quarterback, if he sees it differently than the center, then you have breakdowns and things like that. But I would just say to that, whoever makes the line calls, he has final say. So everybody's got to see it through his eyes. Right. So whether it's the center or it's the quarterback, it doesn't really matter. If the center says, we're pointed this way, then you're pointed that way. Right. That's the play. So it's on the quarterback to see it through the center's eyes and vice versa. I just look at it, and I remember one thing that AVP said to us that I really thought was sound reasoning for it. Just think about how much is on the quarterback on any given play.
Right.
The understanding his play call, the route concept, the protection, the defense, the coverage, the blitz threats, the pass protection, and where threats are going to come from. If you're hot, where you're going with the football. Is it one high? Is it two high? Is it man? Is it zone? Like all these different things that you have to think about. And now all of a sudden we're going to add onto the plate setting the mic and setting the protection and checking out of plays and all this different types of stuff. For a young quarterback, that's a lot. It wasn't a lot for Brady because he was Tom freaking Brady,
right,
and he could do those types of things. For younger quarterbacks, that's tough. It's a lot of responsibility. I don't think that Josh McDaniels will throw him into the deep end, so I'm not super worried about it. Small C concern, but that's where I'm coming from.
Ideally, they get there eventually, but we're talking years and years and years down the road.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's go back to the phones. Jay is in Atlanta. What's up, Jay?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I just have just two questions about the coordinators we have. Since we have Terrell Williams, what's the likelihood that he targets someone like, maybe Jared Ivey or Kyle Kennard? And for Josh, what's the likelihood that he targets someone like Judkins or maybe someone who'll be a dinky like Nick Nash? I'll take it offline.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. So Nick Nash is a good little segue here to some of the.
Did you watch Nick Nash yet?
I haven't watched Nick Nash, but he's going to not unfortunately. Shrine Bowl's a great game, but he's going to the Shrine Bowl, and I'm going to.
They have great receivers and tight ends at the Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, so he's going to the Shrine Bowl, so I'm not going to see him. But we also got a question about what's the kid from Stanford, Illuminor,
A.O. Manor.
A.O. Manor.
Before we get to him, real quick, because you mentioned a couple names there.
Yeah.
Kyle Kennard, who I know you have watched.
Yes, the pass rusher, right, from South Carolina.
If you're going to do, tackle or something else at the top of the draft, Kyle Kennard, second round, sign me up.
He's a speed rusher, kind of like an Uche type, I would say.
I think he's a lot more violent.
Yeah, he's an explosive guy. He's a good player.
Yeah.
I am interested in the kid from Stanford. He's going to be in Mobile.
He got Travis Hunter good last year.
Yeah, he's got some good things about him. Kind of in that like Rams receiver mold, right? Like Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. That's a great. Yeah.
I can't wait to see Restrepo though. Restrepo is the guy in Mobile that I can't wait to see.
Well, I'll say this on Nick Nash, and look, it was in the Mountain West, but you want to talk about a volume guy. I'm trying to find his targets from last year. It's a lot.
Yeah. Donovan Jackson is the Ohio State guy, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people thought that he was going to play guard in the league, but he's held up pretty well throughout their run to the championship in the college football playoff, playing tackle at Ohio State. I'm not ruling it out. I don't think it's an arm length issue with him. I think he's going to have the arm length checked off. I think it's more of like a foot speed, recovery talent, mirroring ability, like that kind of thing.
Well, it's also just like, once again, here's a guy that you're drafting to teach to play left tackle.
Yeah.
It's not like he was a tackle who moved inside a guard and moved back out. He was a guard his whole career. If you're going to take a tackle in that spot, can you just take a tackle? Can you just take a left tackle who knows how to play left tackle, and you don't have to start for, tackle 101 in the spring, and we can just get going with, whether it's Connerly, Ursery, even a kid from North Carolina State, Benton, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Why does the left tackle have to be somebody that has, he's either hurt or it's not really his position or this? Like, why can't they just draft a true left tackle? I don't understand why there's so much opposition to that. We're getting too cute with it. Well,
there's no opposition to it for me, but I think that the reason why people are against it is because if you say, we're just going to turn this guy into a left tackle, then you can draft him later. And no one wants to just have their socks for Christmas.
But
we talk about this all the time.
Where Donovan Jackson's going to go, you're not doing that. Donovan Jackson's going to be a top 50 pick. But
he's still going to go in the second round, so you can use 4 on Tep McMillan because nobody wants to eat their vegetables.
Unless,
that's it.
Unless, because he's a first-round guard. He's a really good guard. What if one of those teams there at the end of the first round that needs a guard drafts him as a guard?
Yeah.
But even still, he's going to go in the second round. I think we're on the same page here. I thought you were kind of coming at me. If you're going to take a tackle there, take Connerly. Take Ursery. And maybe they're not there, but move up.
But this is the bottom line is that all these names, and I'm not saying that they're not all, none of them are good football players, but Connerly, Ursery, Josh Simmons, if he falls because of the injury.
That's another one.
Donovan Jackson.
Yeah.
All of these names are getting brought up because people just don't want to eat their vegetables. They don't want socks for Christmas. They don't want the Patriots taking a tackle with their first pick in the draft, whenever that ends up
because they want
being.
somebody they can draft in fantasy and they can buy the jersey. I get that. Well,
yeah.
But here, like, I'm okay with Connerly. I'm okay with Ursery.
Yeah.
Like, that's if you're telling me, Abdul Carter at the top of the draft, fine. But don't just throw a random name out there to make it work, right? If you're going to take a left tackle, they've been half-assing this for too long. You need a real left tackle that day one, you're not going to have to work through transitioning him and teaching him the position. Yeah. Yes, there's going to be adjustments in the NFL. I'm not saying those guys are perfect, but Donovan Jackson could be a great developmental tackle, Evan. He could even be Josh Connerly, right?
Yeah, I hear you. We're in agreement on this. I understand that drafting and maybe a pass rusher is a little bit more sexy than drafting a tackle.
Yeah.
But I understand in theory that drafting a tackle, drafting a defensive lineman, like the trenches. Addressing the trenches is not sexy.
But it's what they have to do. It's what they have to do.
It's not fun, but it's what they have to do. And the one thing that Vrabel has hammered home since day one, since the introductory press conference, is we need to protect the quarterback and we need to affect the other team's quarterback. Right. That's almost a direct quote from what he said at his introductory press conference. Somebody then asked him, what is the one thing that you kind of look at with this roster that you want to fix immediately off the bat that's most important? Offensive line was his number one thing. So he sees it, and I understand that there's different ways to go about this. If this was, what was it, 2021? Yeah. The Jamar Chase, Penny Sewell draft, 21. If this was that draft where you're truly picking between two elite prospects in Penny Sewell and Jamar Chase, there's really no wrong answer in a draft like that, right? Like, it worked out for both sides. The Bengals got a stud receiver to pair with Joe Burrow. The Lions got the best tackle in football. It worked out for both sides. They're probably the best players at their respective positions in the entire NFL. That's very rare. That was a once in a draft, right? Like, that's not going to happen more times than not. So if you get into this position in the draft with the Patriots, it's not Penny Sewell versus Jamar Chase when we're talking about Kelvin Banks and Ted McMillan. Neither one of those guys are in that category as prospects. So you got to think about it like that. You got to recognize that it's not one of those situations. And I go back to last year with the Giants. You take Malik Neighbors, awesome rookie year, stud player, no doubt about it. Everybody sits there and says 100% that this guy is a stud. Where did it get the Giants?
Meanwhile, Joe Alt, even playing out of position, had a hell of a year for the Chargers.
Yeah.
Damn good player for the Chargers.
Really good player. All right. Let's there's one other email here I wanted to get to. Oh, here it is. About Wes Welker.
Yeah.
So, the emailer, this is Sam from St. Catharines, just asked, what makes Wes Welker any different from Troy Brown? Wes Welker just got fired by the Miami Dolphins as their wide receivers coach. Is he just another Troy Brown redux, a guy that we just like because he's a former player here? I would say that he's pretty different from Troy Brown, mainly because he went outside the circle of trust, and he went to San Francisco. He went with Mike McDaniel to Miami. He's been in different systems. He's coached in different places under different, offensive-minded head coaches. So I think that he's got a more well-rounded sort of experience and resume that would make me a little bit more excited. And I think his groups have had some more success. Now, maybe he's had more talent. You could definitely make that argument. But I just look at his experience with the Shanahan tree, with Shanahan himself, and with Mike McDaniel. Troy Brown never did that. He never went outside the nest.
And I also think, look, I've never been in a meeting room with either of them, but some guy, there's no correlation between how good of a player you are and how good of a coach you are. Yeah. There's some guys that were not good players that are great coaches, and there's some, honestly, sometimes the great players can't coach because there's things that come naturally to them that, they don't know how to teach because it comes naturally to them. So everybody's a different level of teacher, which is at the end of the day what this is. And I've never been in a room with them, but you look at the way Wes Welker's guys have developed. You look at the lack of development they had here, and I kind of feel like maybe Wes Welker's just personality-wise, whatever he's doing to get that message across, he might just be a better teacher.
Yeah. And what was that? Oh, I just lost it. There's another email in here about some of the staffers that from last year, any of those guys sticking on, DeMarcus Covington, Alex Van Pelt, T.C. McCartney, Brian Belichick, Mike Pellegrino. So I'll say this about Van Pelt. I don't have any. I don't know if he's coming or going quite yet. There's some stuff on Twitter. I don't know if that's true, but you're crossing languages, right? Like, and I understand that we're impressed by the job that Van Pelt did with Drake May and with Joe Milton.
He deserves credit for it.
He deserves credit for it, no doubt. If Drake May goes on in 5 years and he's Josh Allen, we're going to say AVP did a good job his rookie year. He deserves credit for getting it started. He's Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. Sorry. But if, first of all, it's like you're crossing languages, right? It's still football, but we're like talking like, French and Spanish here with the offensive languages. So how does that work out? How does his terminology, his fundamentals, left foot forward, like all that stuff, how does that fit in Josh McDaniels' system? The second thing, you don't hire Josh McDaniels to have somebody else run the quarterback. Right. Josh McDaniels is coaching the quarterback. It's his show. He's head coach offense. He's going to run the quarterback. He's going to have the quarterback's ear. He's going to be attached to Drake May's hip, and that's how it should go because he's the play caller. Just like AVP was last year. You want the play caller to be the one that's running the quarterback. You don't want it to be somebody else. And as much as I give AVP a ton of credit for what he did, I just think that there's no real connection there. Like, you're just crossing streams. It's not going to make sense. I don't think that that's a great way to go. Nothing against either guy. I just don't think that's a great way to go. The one name on this list that I feel that I would really like to keep, and I think you agree, is Pellegrino.
Yep.
I think that he's a really good cornerbacks coach, has been a really good cornerbacks coach. If they even wanted to promote him to like pass game coordinator, is now popular on the other side of the ball. You have a run game coordinator, pass game coordinator, defensive coordinator, just like on the offensive side, or even secondary coach where you're coaching the whole room. You're coaching safeties and corners. Right. You could do that as well. I would definitely try to keep Pellegrino around.
I would too.
Is any of those other guys, McCartney?
McCartney. You figure McCartney goes with Van Pelt.
Yeah.
And, Covington, what's his role? He's not going to take the motion, so.
Yeah,
probably not. It's just Pellegrino and Brian Belichick. If he's around too, I think he's done a good job. I'd keep him.
Yeah,
if you can.
Safety room had a tough time last year, but a lot of that was
they were decimated by injuries.
Injuries, off-field stuff.
Yeah.
Like not a ton of it was necessarily in his control. All right, Jesse is in the car. What's up, Jesse? Jesse, what's up?
Jesse, what's up?
Going once. All right, call us back, and we'll get you back on the air here. Jesus is in Denver. What's up, Jesus?
Yo, what's up, man? I know it's going to sound like a dumb question, but
no dumb questions.
What are the chances Josh McDaniels totally hates Drake May and switches quarterback, because he does have a track record of doing that?
0.0.
I would guess that
call,
was
and there's
a big part of the interview.
And there's no dumb questions. And I don't mean to say that like it was a dumb question, but 0.0. Drake May is the quarterback here. He's the future of the franchise here. Josh McDaniels, I'm sure, is giddy about working with Drake May, and I would be if I was him. I mean, that guy is a ball of clay. Like, that's a lot of fun. Like I said earlier with the Cheesecake Factory analogy, you can call anything. You can call RPO. You can call quarterback run. You can move the pocket. You can drop back pass. You can play action pass. You can gun action. Like, you can literally do anything. You can do anything at your disposal with Drake May. That's got to be music to Josh McDaniels' ears. I think that would be really exciting. We had another email from a long time listener, Alex, because this person, I'm trying to find it, has been listening for so long that he remembers something that I said on a Clintus podcast in 2020 about the Cam Newton offense.
Okay.
So we're going back a ways. He said he's been listening for a long time to us. So he said, I remember listening to Evan back in 2020 saying that the McDaniels offense with Cam seemed a little disjointed. Like, he tried to attach his traditional drop back passing game a la Brady to specialized quarterback run package. Was that an issue with McDaniels or because of, Cam's limitations, COVID, all that kind of stuff? It's a really good question, Andrew from Lincoln, who I know you're an avid listener. We really do appreciate that because 2020, you're going back.
That's going way back, yeah. In fact, you were listening that closely during that season with everything that was going on.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. In terms of the question, it's a good question. Yeah. And there is an element to that you're basically taking this option package that exists, because of the type of quarterback that you have, and now you're going to try to marry it and pair it with a more traditional approach of even under center or drop back pass or whatever the case may be. I would at least be cautiously optimistic at the time right now that it will work. Because Drake May is such a better passer than Cam Newton was in 2020. And I think he's going to be fully capable and operational running a traditional drop back passing game like Josh McDaniels runs. So I'm a little bit more optimistic because of that. But if it does, the one thing that you could see concern about, I suppose, is that they kind of get stuck in between, right? Like, do they want to be this Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels option offense, or do they want to be the Brady offense? And you got to get caught in between a little bit.
The one other thing I'd say to remember about the 2020 season being disjointed, not only did they not have a spring, Cam Newton didn't sign here until July 8th.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a ton of time to put stuff together.
Yeah.
I just, that whole thing felt like it was kind of thrown together at the last minute because it was. That's essentially what it was. So, we referenced the Cam Newton offense, but the idea is now you have more time that's going to be put into it. They're also going to have more time to work on it. They didn't have a spring that year. They had an abbreviated training camp because of COVID. We're just kind of using that as a reference point more than like this is what they should do.
It's fun. It's an interesting way to look at it in terms of combining sort of two very different philosophies into one. And I think what is so intriguing about it is that because McDaniels is a really good game planner and very versatile and very fluid in terms of his approach. Like it doesn't have to always be every single week we're going to run a bunch of RPOs, right? Like some weeks maybe they're playing a team that they just feel like they have an advantage there, that they can do that sort of thing, and then they can also play the other way if they have to. Ultimately, at the end of the day, with any offense, who drop backs past the best wins the Super Bowl every single year. It's just. We go back, we always argue about the 49ers Super Bowl a couple years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo against the Chiefs. What happened? They got into the fourth quarter. One team could drop back pass at a high level. The other team couldn't.
The other team was still drop back passing. They didn't need to.
And that decided the Super Bowl. It decides the Super Bowl every single year. When all the bells and whistles are gone, when the scheme and the play actions and the motions and all that kind of stuff, when all that fades away and it's the fourth quarter, you have 4 minutes to go, and you're down 3 points. Can you matriculate down the field? Like, can you find that? And that's where the Patriots need to get to. That's why, as much as I didn't mean to totally scoff at you with your Joe Milton package, like that's why that's so important to me. Because if you just look across the board, passer rating differential, drop back EPA, like all those types of things, the teams that are at the top of those lists every single year are the teams that win. It's really, that's the league. So I'm excited to see what McDaniels does with Drake May in that respect, because I think that he's really good at those types of things. Before we wrap it up, I do want to talk a little bit about next week, going to the Senior Bowl. We do have a little bit of AFC East breaking news that I wanted to touch on too. So just now coming across from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, Aaron Glenn has been named the head coach of the New York Jets.
Okay.
So he's going to be the Jets head coach. So we now have the AFC East carousel is over. The Jets hire Aaron Glenn. The Patriots hire Mike Vrabel. Obviously, McDaniel and Sean McDermott are still in their respective homes in Miami and Buffalo. So just a quick reaction on Aaron Glenn in the division.
He had a hell of a year. It was 1 year. He had a hell of a year.
Yeah.
Is he that different than Robert Saleh philosophically? I still think the Jets kind of stepped in it, firing Saleh. He was not the issue. But we'll see. What do we got? 3 defensive coaches in the division now, and the one offensive coach should probably be on his way out soon.
It's interesting. Nice. It's interesting.
Should he not be? I mean, I'm sorry. The team can't beat. They don't beat good teams, and that's not they're.
I know.
Like statistically, look
funny.
at their record against teams over 500. I don't see how you stick with him that much longer. It's organizational malpractice.
So it's interesting because the Jets usually I mentioned at the top of the show, usually flip-flop, right? You go from a defensive guy to an offensive guy, or a culture guy to a hard ass, or whatever the case may be.
I guess they did go non-former player to former player, but
the Jets literally just hired the same guy. Now they run a much different scheme.
Right.
Aaron Glenn in Detroit is a man blitzer. Like, he comes after quarterbacks with the blitz. He plays man-to-man coverage. In terms of that, you could not be more polar
pressure's
opposite.
on for Sauce Gardner.
You could not be more polar opposite in terms of that. But what I think is funny about it is that there's 0.0% of a chance that Woody Johnson has any idea what I'm talking about, right? Like, there's no way that Woody Johnson is hiring a coach and being like, so what's your scheme? What's your philosophy?
Well, he just goes
defense?
and looks on Madden, but
no way. So that guy has no clue. So basically what we're getting at here is that, once again, the Jets are hiring a culture-building defensive coach, which is what they've done for 100 years. Like Rex Ryan, Robert Saleh, like, go right on down the line.
He was the culture builder, but Eric Mangini.
Like, who was in between Rex and Saleh? Because obviously there was somebody.
No, that was different. They tried an offensive coach, and they hired Adam Gase, which might be the worst off for
Maybe that's what squared them off from the offensive guys.
You know what?
Adam Gase.
I would not blame them for that, for how bad of a coach he was. Do you think there's a chance offensive coaches didn't want to go there because they didn't want to work with Rodgers?
It's possible. Like I said, you usually see teams flip-flop philosophy, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the Jets looked at their situation and said, you know what, we need a defensive coordinator.
Also,
right?
what is it now 5 coaches in the NFL or coaching teams they played for? Vrabel, Glenn, Campbell, Ryans, and there's one more. Who am I missing?
There is.
I think. Oh, Harbaugh.
So quickly on the Jets.
Yeah.
They went from.
Start at Belichick and go from there. Let's do the last 25 years.
So they went from Parcells.
Yep.
Defensive guy.
To Belichick for like a week.
Yep.
Yep.
Is this Algro?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so Algro coached one season. Herm Edwards, who I believe is
Herm Edwards is an
offensive guy, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to say. No, Herm Edwards coached defensive backs.
Oh, he did? Okay.
And then was a defensive
He's one of those guys, like, when I started watching football, he was just always a head coach.
Yeah, no, Herm Edwards was a defensive guy. Eric Manginius, defensive guy, of course, notorious.
Groh was a defensive guy, by the way, too.
Rex Ryan.
Defensive.
Todd Bowles.
Defensive. I forgot they had Todd Bowles. That's
2 years of Adam Gase.
Ugh.
Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
And now Aaron Glenn. So really for our, like, football watching lifetime, which I start with, like, the late 90s. I think we're both in the same category with Bill Parcells with the Jets. Our football lifetime, the Jets have had a defensive-minded head coach for all but 2 seasons.
And you could argue those 2 seasons that offensive coach didn't really know offense either.
So to say that they have a type is an understatement. They certainly have a type. And that's interesting.
Pete Carroll coached the Jets.
Yeah, he did coach the Jets.
For a year.
Yeah. Aaron Glenn's
Holtz.
I'm not, like, crazy about Aaron Glenn. I'm not going to lie. I understand that he has some good traits as, like, a culture builder, intense guy, like, gets players to play for him. All, like, that game plan against the Commanders would terrify me.
Well, they didn't have anybody. The
I
whole
know,
roster's
but all they did was, like, let's blitz him again. Let's play man-to-man, and we'll blitz Jaden Daniels another time. Like, come on. Like, you got to do something different. Even Brady, of all people, called it out at halftime. Mr. Like, I don't say anything to ruffle anybody's feathers, said at halftime, maybe mix in some zone, Aaron Glenn. Never did.
Look, I think there's some upside with Aaron Glenn, just in general, as a coach. That's a terrible fit for him and for the team. It's a bad fit, and it's unfortunate for him because you only get so many chances, especially if you're a defensive coach.
Yeah, we'll see what he does with Aaron Rodgers and that whole situation. Like, if Aaron Rodgers can be back, if the Jets are now a quarterback team, who he hires as offensive coordinator, I'm sure he has somebody
probably
already.
Engstrand, right?
Well, I think Engstrand's going to replace Ben Johnson. So I think that he's already earmarked by Dan Campbell as their replacement. So maybe it's like a Mark Brunell or someone else from that tree. We'll see, but it's an interesting hire. It's so Jets. Like, is this any different than Todd Bowles or Robert Saleh?
It's very Jets. Well, he played. It's the one difference is he played.
Yeah,
that's what you're banking on, I guess.
All right, Jeff.
Real quick on that? What did you think of Liam Cohen turning down the Jags?
Good for him. I thought it was good for him. I don't think it's a horrible situation necessarily because you do have Trevor and you do have some talent on that roster. But I just don't think he's ready. And I think that this should be more normal and more accepted.
Yep.
That Ben Johnson did it. Now it went the other way for Bobby Slowick. He did it and it blew up in his face. But you look at Liam Cohen, he's bounced around from college to pros, college to pros, college to pros. He needs some experience at the NFL. He needs to not just coordinating, but leading a room, leading a building, understanding head coach responsibilities. Good for him. It will come for him eventually, just because he's such a great offensive mind. Like he'll figure it out eventually.
I'm with you. The league's gotten so far ahead in the offense, especially in the offense side of the hiring process. Like you'll see quarterbacks coaches interviewing for head coaching jobs and stuff like that. It needs to slow down for the betterment of the league, for the betterment of these coaches. There's a reason the league is a coaching problem right now, and that's part of it. I didn't think it would be the coaches taking the lead and slowing it down. I thought it would be the lead, but like you said, Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, now Liam Cohen, good for them for waiting for the right opportunity.
I could be totally wrong about Ben Johnson. You know, he's my guy. I could be totally wrong. He could stink in Chicago, okay? But I give him a lot of credit for holding his water and waiting. And my gut says that it's going to pay huge dividends for him. I think he's going to be a much, much better head coach.
It can't hurt
than he would have been 2 years ago because he waited.
Yeah, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
Experience is always good.
Jeff is in Maine. What's up, Jeff?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey,
so been busy the last few weeks, so I haven't been able to call in, but wanted to give you an update on the Manhattan Project.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
We won, boys.
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go.
Secured the win. That's literally all I have.
I love it,
thanks, I can't
call,
stand
Jeff.
fantasy football.
Appreciate
It's the
it.
only fantasy football update I want.
Can it be the Manhattan Project after Week 18? Like it's out of the bag now, right? Like,
I mean, it's such a good nickname.
I know,
it's
but we
such
know.
a good nickname.
We know.
Yeah, everybody knows.
All right. Wanted to wrap it with a little Senior Bowl talk. So I'm going to Mobile next week for the Senior Bowl. I'm excited. Obviously, the prospects will be there. I'm also interested, and I'll definitely report back on the show next week who from the Patriots is going to be there. I think the head coach is going to be there. We'll see if the coordinators are with him. It'd be interesting, you know.
Did McDaniels used to go?
I think he did towards the end when the bill was supposed to be opening his world to him. Remember that whole period of time? I think he did towards the end. As a defensive-minded guy in Vrabel, you would think he would want that offensive coordinator with him to kind of give some input. You know, last year, AVP and Ben McAdoo and those guys all went to pro days and stuff like that to kind of be that offensive, focus on that side when they were watching the quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised if McDaniel's there. I'm sure Ryan Cowden will be there. Stretch will definitely be there. All the guys will be there, so that would be cool from that perspective. But also just from a prospect perspective, really good group again by Jim Nagy. You know, does a great job putting together the Senior Bowl roster. And what's great about it is that we all know the guys at the top of the draft, right? We all know Abdul Carter, Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, Tet McMillan, Mason Graham. We all know those names. Travis Hunter. The Senior Bowl roster this year is the tackles and the receivers are like all that second and third tier, right? That are going to be going from, let's say, pick 25 to pick 55, right? That are right in that sweet spot for the Patriots at 38. So we'll really be able to get into and, kind of splice together where I feel and you feel, guys like Restrepo and the kid from Stanford, the receiver from Stanford. All the tackles are going to be there that are going to be in that range of the draft as well. So I'm really looking forward to being able to kind of start to stack that part of the board because I've already done some homework on the top of the draft, started doing that in November. But I don't have as much knowledge about those day two guys, like the prime day two guys. Last year, Ladd McConkey was there and he was a stud at Mobile and he's a stud for the Chargers, right? So like you start to find some of those guys. I'm sure you're writing up some sort of a preview at some point on your end for the Senior Bowl for Shrine, all that. Is there anything you want to plug or anybody that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'll have beginning of next week on 985sportshub.com. It's what is it? Practices are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll have something up on Monday or Tuesday morning. But yeah, wide receivers and tackles. I think that's the big focus. I don't think a ton of the top edge rushers or that second tier of edge rushers are going. So.
Yeah. I don't know how many of those guys, you always get there and like a few guys like decide not to participate and only do like, interviews and stuff like that with teams. But I just know that there's a lot of people, early day 2 prospects that are going to be there in Mobile next week. So we'll do a show next week. We got to hammer down a time, probably sometime in the later afternoon, just because we'll have morning practices and things like that on Wednesday. But it'll probably be closer to a later afternoon start than our normal noon start. And you'll be here to host it here from the mothership, and we'll get into a Senior Bowl in Mobile. It'll be fun because we've talked a lot about coaches, we've talked a lot about hiring, coordinators and all that kind of stuff. So now it kind of feels like that's behind us, and we'll really start to get into the off season and the personnel side of things and the players. So we'll be back next week for that show. It'll be exciting, and then the following week we'll I'm sure talk a lot more about it when we're both together again. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.